Well, how do you intend to gain possession of this land that you want, and how do you intend to get there?
It's a contribution that the black man made in this country, which amounts to 310 years of slave labor, for which we have never been given a dime or a cent. Places a burden upon the American white man today, for which the government should pay. Since we cannot live in peace together, mixed up on this continent, the alternative to that solution is to divide a separate part of this country into which our people can migrate, and in which the government again should supply us with the machinery and the tools necessary to establish our own independent society and our own independent country. And in this way, it will be creating a solution that the black man himself, our people, ourselves, can bring about if we have that capability. And for your clarification, because this has been brought up, some people say, well, why should the government do this? If this government can send billions of dollars to communist countries like Poland and Yugoslavia, and to neutralist countries in Asia and Africa who have never made any contribution whatsoever to the sum net worth of this economy and country, and at the same time, this government feels that it is too much to set about something real to solve the problem for the slaves who made a greater contribution even than your people did, why the government doesn't even deserve to continue to function as a government.
What land is available that's not already possessed by others?
When you came to this country, the land was inhabited by the Indians, and you didn't have any problem then.
Free the land, battle cry in our freedom call. Political prisoners in the system, we say free them all. You hear the call, haters never wanna see you ball. But I'm a freedom fighter, I just wanna see them fall. Standing tall, cause we trapped in the system, they slapped us in prison. Just a part of capitalism. I'm a revolutionary, I adapt to the system. I ain't playing with y'all haters, I come strapped when I kick them.
Black fist in the air as we walk through the door, representing Malcolm X and Assata Shakur. Queen Mother Moore, Batula Shakur. Fight to free the land is what we doing it for. The struggle, the leader, for Huey, for Mia, Garvey Fred Hampton, General Hamisha, Grandmaster Teacher. He's blasting y'all, you're gonna feel it. The voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
These are voices of New Africa.
Free the land.
We got to have thinkers that are going to direct us in terms of how we're going to be able to achieve the goal of liberation throughout the world. We have the same problem. That is neo-colonialism. We have no control over any area in which we live. Matter of fact, we have been diminished, and all of those things have happened under the American system of capitalism. That's why we're saying we want to break away and create our own, and have our own self-government, and have our own control over our lives.
You're listening to the voices of New Africa, where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. Free the land.
My bad, I was muted, but welcome to another episode of the Voices of New Africa, the show where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. I'm your host, Brother Prophecy, and of course, I'm joined with my comrade, my brother in the struggle, my elder, my grandmaster teacher, Brother Fadali. How you doing, comrade?
I'm doing as great as I can under the oppressive systems that has our people under bondage. And we must say that we're going to educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. And so it's important that we begin to try to build up our forces so that we'll be able to bring our people to liberation.
All right. Now, you said something real important. You said, what we do is we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. What do we mean by that? uneducated, miseducated. Because I thought, in America, everybody's so smart. We know everything. We're Americans. They are. What do they mean by that? What do we mean by that?
So in America, education is the master's education, the oppressor's education. Our education, which we under the movement that we created in this country, was to bring the truth back into the fold of the masses of the people. But the masses of people are being educated through media and through in the schools. In my situation, like unless you self-educate, you will not be able to really get a real true education, because all the books and all the things that have been printed up by the oppressor is designed to give us false theories and false information and disinformation. So therefore, when we talk about the uneducated, we mean that, how people drop out of these educational systems because they can't get anything out of them. So it's up to us to begin to try to set up systems and institutions that will put the people who are uneducated into a situation where we'll be able to give them real information. Now, the miseducated are people who are graduating from these colleges and these universities for the most part, and in the universities and for the most part, we find that people are getting all kinds of theories of thinking about America, thinking America is the land of the home of the brave and the land of the free. And we have not achieved freedom. Chattel slavery, was defeated. Jim Crow, to a certain extent, was, defeated. But there are masses of our people that are in prisons, which is a new slavery, because we are the majority in the prison. But the people in the prison, we have people in prison that are prisoners of war, and many of them are doing self-education and bringing education into the fold of the masses in there. Matter of fact, the prisoners are probably more educated than the masses of people outside of prison, because they don't have for the most part, the belief of the so-called land of freedom.
No, you're absolutely right, and I can co-sign with that, because I do a program within the prison system where we go into the prison and we talk to the inmates. And every time I go, it's one of the my favorite things to do, because the level of political awareness within the prison system is amazing to me. And when you get inside the beast and you see actually what's going on, it becomes clear. That we have been under attack, because these are where our soldiers are. These are where the people who are supposed to be on the front line. I even talked to my comrades who were in there, talked to the prison, said this to the inmates. I said, if we had you brothers out there working with us, we would be unstoppable, because just the strength and the power and the intellect that is incarcerated. And it's unfortunate that too many of our brothers and sisters have to actually get incarcerated before they can gain a political education, before they can get exposed to this type of information. That's why what we're doing is so important, and we will continue to spread this proper education and continue to educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. Big shouts out to my comrade Atiba. I talked to him this morning, and he about to join us real soon. Real soon, we got some things in the works for him to get out there and spread his intellect and his political education with everybody. So big up to comrade Atiba. But anybody out there listening, hey, drop a like, drop a comment, let us know who you are. so we can shout you out and, you know, have this dialogue between us, because this is the voices of New Africa, not the voices of Brother Prophecy and our Grandmaster Teacher. It is our voices, and we want to have an interactive conversation with everybody. But as always, we like to start the show off. We're kind of talking about what's been going on around the world with a little segment we call Around the World in Black Again.
Live from Ida B. Wells City, spanning from Africa, Asia, all the way to the United States of America. This is Around the World in Black Again. It's the news, y'all, what's going on? It's the news, y'all, what's going on? It's the news, y'all, what's going on? It's the news, y'all, what's going on?
Is Around the World in Black Again, and there's a lot going on in the media. So I open it up to you, Grandmaster Teacher. What happened that kind of caught your eye?
Okay, so we know that even during this so-called weekend of so-called American celebration, that Trump has put out a so-called ceasefire, a false ceasefire, a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza, and supposedly Israel was supposed to be in agreement with it, but the Hamas forces, the liberation forces that are representing the Palestinians, have said they want to have a real ceasefire, and so Netanyahu had basically blocked this so-called peace agreement that's supposed to have been set up by Trump. We know that's false, because what Trump has done is to help crush the people who were fighting with the people of Gaza. To in other words, Lebanon has been basically taken out. Syria has been taken out. Iran, who was a major supporter of the Gaza forces, has been, taken out basically of the struggle in terms of trying to aid the people of Gaza. The people of Gaza are being starved to death by the Israelis, the so-called IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces are bombing and killing people. And they have set up a false so-called feeding apparatus in which 500 people have been killed trying to get hold to some food that is organized by a force that is organized by Netanyahu, who is Prime Minister of Israel. And basically they're starving. Now they're preventing any kind of aid to come in, trying to force the valiant people, the Hamas forces, which are holding on to they're fighting for their independence. And the world has been, particularly from South Africa, have been leading forces to call for the genocide to end in Palestine and in that area of the world by the Israeli government. It shows you how these forces, I'm talking about the Israelis, because the United States is given $3.5 million a year.
$billion.
Israeli. And have given them all the airplanes and all the things that are and all the bombs and all the weapons that are going against the struggle of the Palestinians. And it's important that we understand this, because their negotiation is always unconditional surrender. In other words, you have to give up everything you got. And we got to understand the recent history has shown that they can't gave up all this.
And look like my brother
cannot be in Tennessee right now. and then they turned around and overthrew the government of Muammar Gaddafi and assassinated Muammar Gaddafi and did everything they possibly can, because Libya was one of the richest countries in the world, and Libya was feeding its people. Libya was giving the money off the oil to the people. Libya was trying to bring Africa, help bring Africa together by trying to set up the communication system internally for Africa, because Africans have been dependent upon Europeans for communication from country to country, instead of the whole African continent having a system of communication. And Gaddafi was setting that up. Matter of fact, Gaddafi was along with other people in the Middle East trying to come together so that Africa could have a currency. And in alliance with the people of Iraq. This was the reason the United States went in and invaded Iraq and overthrew Saddam Hussein, because they had all this gold that comes off the oil, the resources, and they were beginning to come together. I'm talking about all the forces that were fighting for their people's independence. And so consequently, when we look at what's happened in Gaza today, we're witnessing a genocide. And I hope, well, there are no forces, like to prevent the genocide at this stage. And world opinion, United States and Israel are going against world opinion. They have no respect for the United Nations call for the end to genocide, and the West is doing all of these things. This is why when we talk about this, we talk about capitalism. What is the danger of capitalism? Capitalism has prevented almost all forces, except those forces that have liberated themselves, such as China and even Russia. Liberated themselves from the capitalist system to the extent that they're able to operate independently from their own base with their own arms and their own weapons and all this. And so so even when we look at this, we can see that the possession of nuclear weapons would have been something that would have prevented Iran from being attacked to the extent that it was, and all these bombs being sent by the United States to try to destroy the economy and try to make Iran independent. And Iran was the main force in the Middle East that was trying to attempt to protect the Palestinians. And Iran is a Persian nation, not an Arab nation. All the Arab nations, such as Saudi Arabia and Jordan and Qatar and all those people were going against the Palestinian people and allowing the United States to have a base in their area, so that to prevent the people from coming together in the so-called Middle East, and to do everything they can to make Iran to be the bully. But the United States and Israel are the bullies in the Middle East and the bullies in the world. The United States is the biggest bully in the world. The United States has created an empire in which it has about 800 bases throughout the world to keep the people from having liberation.
Exactly. You said a lot there. But it just, just to reemphasize the fact that what we're going against is a global enemy. It's something that has the same forces that have exploited and brutalized and really been devastating to African people here in America exist throughout the entire globe. The same forces that are oppressing the people of Palestine, the same forces that assassinated Gaddafi, and just recently Obama even came out and said that he regretted taking out Gaddafi. Because if you look at what's going on in Libya now, you know, that place is a disastrous area right now. Everything is basically falling apart. But these are the same imperial forces. And, you know, just to go back to something that you talked about earlier about Gaza, when the people there are starving and the people there who are trying to get aid, basically Israel set up a kill zone, a trap for them. In other words, they created something under the guise, under the umbrella of, hey, you can get some food, you can get some aid here. And the people who are starving, trying to get some help, trying to get some aid, trying to get some food to prevent from starving to death, are going to try to get there, and they're getting shot down for trying to do that. There have been hundreds of people who have fell into this trap. So this is a true genocide. But I don't want to stay on that all day, because we got a lot that we want to talk about. Something in particular, and I guess this is, you know, what the show was about initially. This was on the title of the show. In Memphis, Tennessee, South Memphis to be specific, there's this gigantic multi-million-dollar corporation has been established, created by Elon Musk. Unfortunately, most people in Memphis haven't really even heard about it. They don't hear anything about it. It hasn't provided any job to the people of Memphis. It has not enhanced the way of living here in Memphis, not one bit. But the reality is the amount of pollution and the amount of toxins that this corporation, this company is putting out, unregulated, going against our policies, illegally putting it out, is causing detrimental conditions, devastating conditions in the South Memphis area, an area which has already been the victim of so much environmental racism, so much death, so much pollution, to the point where documentaries have been written about what Elon Musk has done with his company XAI. People have already started dying, and it hasn't been here for like, what, a year and a half, 2 years maybe? So this is really an example of what you was talking about with capitalism, and how the billionaire class, the capitalist class, exploit the people to benefit their own pockets, their own wealth, their own empowerment, even if that means people are dying in mass. And this is happening in South Memphis, and really is happening all over the world, all over the United States. When you see our communities, you see these same conditions. You see people coming into our communities with these plants, with these corporations, and they have dangerous chemical byproducts, dangerous pollution within the air, and it is detrimental to the people. People are dying because of it. This is something that has happened not only in the South Memphis neighborhood, it happened in Westwood, it happened in North Memphis. Matter of fact, what's that, Vera Perezno or some company like that had a major lawsuit because they were dumping nuclear waste products in the water in North Memphis, and people were dying. In fact, that area code had the highest infant mortality death rate in the entire country. So this is no different, you know, than this is nothing new. But what's happening with this XAI company is on a whole nother level. The level of pollution is just ridiculous. And the reason why is because Elon Musk got into that AI game late. And they said in order for him to catch up with everything that was already going on, it would take about 2 years. But Elon Musk said, no, that's not acceptable. In 2 years, I'll be too far behind and I can't catch up. So what he did was he bypassed all of the regulations, all of the things that were set in place to protect the people, at least somewhat protect the people. He bypassed it right here in Memphis, Tennessee. And we really got to put some politicians on blast for allowing this to happen, even though the politicians, when everything came to light, they was like, well, I didn't know he was doing it, But that's where we stand right now. We got this big corporation that is literally killing people in South Memphis, and these are poor people. And unfortunately, people just don't care about poor people, But what do you have to say about this particular situation?
Okay, so when we talk about the billionaire class, and the United States has more billionaires than any country in the world. Matter of fact, I think last year, over 3,000 billionaires were made per day. I mean, in the United States. And I'm not sure about that figure, but I know I heard the figure of 359,000 people became billionaires in the United States this last year in 24. And so when we talk about that, and we're talking about, and they use things in terms of what they say is scientific, and what they have done, what the oppressors have done is that they have expropriated all what would have been beneficial by science, and has made it as militarized everything under science, and are oppressing people in the world, not just here in Memphis, but also all over the United States. And they have eliminated all what they call the left wing opposition. That is, they have imprisoned and put people in prison. And when we talk about just Africans in prison, we're also talking about Chicano, Mexicano, and other people and other non-white people that are in the prison, so that they become the majority in the prison because they have resisted in areas like Philadelphia and even Memphis. We have people that are in prison that are supposed to be out. And let me say this on that. Capitalism, that's what, okay, so we have what you just described in Memphis is neo-colonialism, and that they have utilized, and in other cities of color, they have utilized people that look just like me and you, that are African, in appearance, to sell out the interests of the people that are in the areas of the man. That's why in all the cities where we form the majority, we'll find that we are basically poor people, and we have a handful or more of people who are enriching themselves as a result of their cooperation with these billionaires. In other words, but they're only getting a pittance of whatever, and the churches and all the other institutions that's supposed to be organizing our people, they've all basically sold out. And so consequently, what we find is in the guise of science, that's why the oppressed people have to begin to become scientific, so that we can have the proper analysis about what is happening to us, so that we can organize ourselves and do everything that's possible to bring us into a struggle against that system. And so that's why we're saying we want to be independent. We want to break away from this capitalist system called the United States and create our own. We recognize that we can't do this alone, that we have to join the world in fighting against this class of people who are controlling all the wealth. And we began to, matter of fact, even though I didn't get a chance to hear about what happened on July the 4th, African people are rising rising to the point of where they were going to begin to challenge the world system of the so-called International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and all these things that have put us in debt and keeping us dependent. And so we got to begin wherever we are in the world to organize ourselves to become independent in all the areas, to control our community so we can be able to create our own apparatus so that we'll be able to join the world and liberate ourselves from this capitalist system, from this world, global system that you always talk about. This global system was created with Portugal and Spain been given the right by the Pope to go around the world and conquer other people, and they took over South America, and all the other European nations joined them in taking over all the non-white areas of the world, and for their riches, to get riches. That slavery was created as a result to enrich this class of capitalists who have continued to rule the world. And so when we look at this whole thing about what's happening in Memphis, we are part of the struggling mass of people in the world, and we got to join forces. But we got to create unity in our community, and we got to get rid of, by any means necessary, these neo-colonialists. Because as long as these neo-colonialists are helping the oppressor to make the oppressed people continue to be dependent, we won't be able to do anything. So once we unite ourselves and we understand who the internal enemy as well as the external enemy. The internal enemy are these people that look just like the oppressed, who have decided that they're going to be cooperating and helping the oppressor do these things. And the external enemy is the oppressor, the West. The West is the enemy of the world. But inside of all the oppressed people, we have this class of people that we call neo-colonialists who are participating in keeping us down. So even before we can even get to the real enemy, we got to get the real enemy that's inside of us, that have to put themselves up as our leaders and put themselves up as people who are concerned about our community, but they're acting hand in hand with the oppressors.
Exactly. You said a whole lot about that, and I want to kind of revisit. You talked about how the Portugal were given the rights to go out and enslave African people, and I think that's important to understand that when you said that, it wasn't like you were just going away from the topic. What's happening right here in America? What's happening in Memphis, Tennessee with XAI? This is really a continuation of something that has been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years. Like what happened during the slave trade, European slave trade of African people, what happened during the enslavement of our people, what happened through Jim Crow, all of this. This is a continuation of that. A lot of people think that this struggle is over. No, this is a part of that. One of the they always say is this saying that the biggest trick that the devil ever played on the people is to make the people believe that he didn't exist. But it's kind of similar to what we are talking about, because one of the most detrimental things that we are going through right now is the belief that the struggle does not exist, that this enemy of our people does not exist, that somehow everything is all great and free. And I know we celebrated Juneteenth a few weeks ago, and some people incorrectly say, well, that's my Independence Day, that's Freedom Day. It's not. It's not. It marked the end of chattel slavery, one form of slavery, but it did not end slavery in general, because slavery is about the exploitation of the people's labor. to benefit a small class of people, a small group of people, even though this exploitation is detrimental and devastating to the people. So a lot of the rule chains have been eliminated from that system, but the system still exists because the power structure still exists. So when you look at rewind a few hundred years at the end of slavery, when you look at what our people actually own, the amount of land that we own, we actually own less now. We just moved from being in chain slave to wage slave, and we're still being exploited. And the system is still detrimental to us, and we're still being brutalized. They just got smarter, got more high tech, more sophisticated. Now it's kind of harder, to see what the enemy actually is, because right now it's advantageous for individuals in the system to treat us better, to like us, to say, oh, you're cool, you're equal as me. You can go to the same stores as I go to. You can use the same toilets as I do. See, I like you. I'm treating you better. But that does not change the concrete reality that the power dynamics still exist. The power dynamics are still the same. And the things that are needed for our community, for true liberation within our community, we're not even talking about that. We're not talking about anything like that. You don't talk about reparations to repair the damage that this over 400-year genocidal program has cost our people. We're not even talking about addressing that situation. When we bring that up, we don't even want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. So, it's important that we put things in its proper context, that we understand that the struggle did not turn our fault. The struggle that Sojourner Truth and Ida B. Wells and Malcolm X and Martin King and all of our freedom fighters from the Black Panthers, the Black Liberation Army, the struggle that they fought, we're still fighting it today. And we have to look at it like that. And we have to understand that concretely and not be detached from that. And we have to understand that these same enemies that oppressed us back then and are oppressing us now are the same enemies that are oppressing the entire world on a global scale. We have to be clear about these things, because we don't want to adopt that European mindset of individualism. Hey, I'm gonna do this as an individual, or us against the world mentality. No, because this is a global system, this is a global enemy, a global oppressor, and it takes a global approach. We have to connect with the brothers and sisters in the continent. That is paramount. We have to connect with the brothers and sisters in the continent, because that's where it is. Africa is the richest land mass in the world. The people are in poverty, but not because Africa is poor. They're in poverty because European and Western nations have put that poverty on Europe through this system of capitalism, through the system of exploitation, because they are exploiting the riches, the minerals, the wealth, the oil, the gold, and so forth, in order to make themselves rich, to make themselves powerful. You take away Africa, Elon Musk ain't rich. He can't even run his company. You can't even build a Tesla. Steve Jobs and the Microsoft guy and all of these billionaires, they can't be rich without what you get from Africa. The technological advancements don't exist without Africa. So it's ridiculous, like you said earlier, the fact that they don't even have their own independent communications. They have to go through European countries in order to dial out, to call, in order to do these things, as you said, which is a byproduct of the neo-colonialist system that we have to get rid of. And we have to understand neo-colonialism, because it exists in Africa and it exists now in Memphis, Tennessee. Even though Elon Musk is poisoning and killing the people in South Memphis, we got a black mayor. We got how we do this when we have a black mayor, a young mayor.
We got two black mayors.
Mm-hmm. You can go, comrade. Now I yield.
Okay. So what we're talking about is that we got to organize as a people. We must organize. We must create organizations that will be able to solve our problems. We got to create organizations that can challenge this system. Even when we talked about earlier about the Hamas and its struggle to fight against the Israel, which was seen to be a monumental thing, but the masses of people in the world have began to come together. Once we come together, there's no power on earth that can defeat us. And so when we look at that situation that's happening in South Memphis, then because in South Memphis, they were going to put a pipeline that was going to be detrimental to the water supply, and the people of South Memphis came together under the direction of some people who are not neo-colonialists and organized and beat back their effort to put this detrimental pipeline there. So to give you an example that we can even though we're largely unorganized and understand that when we look at the United States and we look at so-called Donald Trump, the so-called president, the president of the American empire, that our people in alliance with the other people, the other non-white and people who are sincerely understanding that we must be liberated as a people and become our allies, that we should not become stressful to the extent of thinking that we have been defeated. Our people, and once we do the educational part that we talked about earlier, we'll come together, and then we'll be able to unite not only here but with the other people of the world. Because in order to beat this global system, you got to have a global organized mass of people who are determined to become free, become liberated, and so therefore all of us who are already have become educated and understand what's going on need to come together and put ourselves and our resources out so that we can organize ourselves in conjunction with what all the other people who are organized are doing. So in the Western Hemisphere, when Malcolm X came back from Africa, his tour to Africa, he made a statement that at that particular time, he came to organize not just the Africans in the so-called United States, but the 150 million Africans that are in the Western Hemisphere. And that's our challenge. Our challenge is to organize ourselves, and the Republic of New Africa is just the beginning of trying to pull together mass of people. And we're going to understand that in the Western Hemisphere, that we are not the only New Africans. All the African people in the Western Hemisphere are New Africans. And so therefore we must come together and organize ourselves and begin to link up with people in Brazil, and people in Colombia, people in Haiti, the people in Cuba, the people in the Caribbean, throughout the Caribbean and throughout South America that look just like us, and the other non-white people, the native people who were the ones that were first, enslaved by these oppressors that came from Europe, and so that we can begin to link up. And in the 1970s, we achieved a lot in terms of trying to bring Pan-Africanism into fruition. We got to go back and bring Pan-Africanism, so that because it's only through our link with Africa, the richest things where we came from, to aid them in the liberation and become a part of that liberation movement so that we can begin to recapture our wealth, the wealth that we still have, but we don't have control of. And so when we look at these local politics and in terms of why they're so-called doing a so-called immigration thing, that is to try to put people, in other words, put people in prison. Matter of fact, they're building prisons in the Everglades to impose prisons on people who have not done anything wrong, because half of America is still Mexico, and then the other half of America is the native people who are situated on reservations. Just like in the African continent, we still have people put in so-called native reserves, and that's why 64% of the land in South Africa is still owned by these people who invaded. They call themselves Afrikaner, but who are Dutch and British people who are getting all the wealth, and now they're moving to America. Trump has brought 59 millionaires, each paying a $5 million fee to become so-called American citizens, so they can continue to control the wealth that they have stolen from Africa.
Exactly, comrade. Exactly. You said a whole lot. You always say a whole lot. And I just want to be trying to figure out where I want to jump in, what I want to pick up on. But something really important that we cannot overemphasize. You talked about the need for organization. And I kind of want to get back on the need for organization, because, it's one thing to talk about the problem, but you got to always be solution centered. And right, as you alluded to earlier, organization is key. It is essential to the liberation of our people, because as an individual, as you grow in consciousness, and you look at the news, and you look at with social media, it's blown everything open because information is everywhere. It's easy to find information right now, especially about all of the negative and terrible things that the system is doing and have been doing for many, many years. But when you grow within that, it's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to get to dwell into the negative and look like it's just hopeless and ain't nothing we can do. It's like, I'm just one person. What can I do? And that's where it comes into organization, getting with like-minded people and organizing and building. We have this program called Work, Train, and Study within the Republic of New Africa that you're going to be hearing a lot about. Matter of fact, I just did some promotional material for that, and we will be hearing a lot about that as the weeks to come. But kind of talk about, give some advice to the people, because you've been an organizer for many decades. So what kind of, where can you start? Where can we start? Or what kind of pointers can you get to the people who are out there frustrated, don't like what's going on, but don't know what to do about it?
Okay. So community control must be an objective. If we don't have community control, and have an organization and control the politics and economics of our community, we would be always eternally defeated. So we got to have organizations, and and at one point in time, in what we call the Black Power movement, our people were moving. Matter of fact, Black Power movement became an international movement. And then one of the things that Malcolm X said, we must internationalize our struggle, because if we don't internationalize our struggle, we'll be confined locally, and so therefore, in creating African organizations in our community to take control of different things that happen to have programs, in the community, programs for the youth. We got to organize the youth, because in the 1960s and 1970s, it was the youth that became the spark for a movement. And so therefore, if we don't get control of the education we must get control of the education of our youth and put our youth into organization and to understand organization, because even now, under the most negative conditions, we find that the most powerful organizations are youth organizations. but they're misdirected. And so therefore we got to begin to get control of the mind, of the best minds that are in these youth organizations, so that we can control everything that goes on to that, and to them to understand that there's no way in the capitalist system can you get power, real power for the people by exploiting the people. So we got to have an educational process for people to understand and understand that they have been used as a tool to put fear in the minds of our people. So we got to grab control of those minds, the best minds that are in those organizations, and begin to direct them to become part and parcel of the member. One of the problems that we had in Memphis was that the organizations such as the NAACP and the so-called big leader organization didn't want you to become a part of the movement. They didn't want you to have any power, and so therefore created a whole anti-Black power movement by calling them Ku Klux Klan in reverse. All these things, that negative things that now they're even people talk about the youth being more deadly than the Ku Klux Klan, stuff like that. That's negativity. So therefore, we have begun to understand that no movement can be built on negativity, and no movement can be built when you're pitting different sectors of the community against each other. And so therefore, we got to pull together a real movement, an African movement that everybody can become a part of the movement. And so, and to break away from these this class system. In other words, we got to fight against the class system, because we got people that think that they're Americans, and here's what Malcolm X said about that to be American. It's like being at a table, a dinner table, and you only have empty plates. And so therefore, when we talk, in other words, there's no advantages that we are getting from this system. So therefore, we must begin to organize ourselves and begin to build up in our community so that we can have control over all forces that are in our community, and do those things that we used to be able to do even under the so-called segregation system and all that, and which any time that we became economically important, they began to go in and kill off all the people they could, like in Oklahoma, when they killed killed the economy of the so-called Black Wall Street. And they did this everywhere. They didn't just do that in Oklahoma. And then once we understand that we must come together, and we got to understand that how do we must eliminate the so-called neo-colonial element, because that's the biggest block that we have. And so organization is important, and scientific organization is more important. In other words, we have to gain control of the science of organizing, and the science of doing of community control, and the science of beginning to create greater organizations that will be able to fight against this massive global organization.
And you said something very, very important. You said, we have to utilize the science of organization, the science of struggle. That's an important concept to know about, to understand, and to utilize and implement in anything you do, because there is a science. A lot of times what happens, if we are not properly educated about the science of struggle, the science of revolution, is we operate off of emotion, and we act off of emotion, and we make decisions based on emotion and not science, not logic, not reasonable, not data, not analyzing the objective reality and finding out, like, okay, this is the best path to take to gain the outcome in which we're trying to generate. So understanding the science, and that requires real study. That actually requires real study. So when you want to go out and you want to fight the system, you don't just jump out and doing something. You don't just go out and say, yeah, I'm gonna follow my heart and this right there. That makes it easy for you to be manipulated. That makes it easy for you to fall victim to misinformation. Because I remember one thing our general used to tell us is that you got to be careful, because mess around, I leave y'all with TD Jakes and y'all be converts. And basically all he was saying is, if you don't have your ideology down pat, if you don't understand critical analysis, if you don't understand the science of the struggle, then what happens is we just fall for something, for somebody who has charisma, somebody who sounds good, who hits a couple of good talking points, and we just blindly follow them, and they can lead us into a ditch easily. And that's a lot of times we see that happening. So I'm glad you brought up the whole principle of science, because that's a lot of times we don't really talk about that. And that's really important. And I see a lot of people going into the incorrect path because they don't understand that there is a science behind it. There's a science behind everything. And if you want to be successful, then you apply the science, because when you apply the science, science is precise. You don't guess about it. It's not a guesswork type thing, you know? But when you do understand the science, you understand that there is no system that cannot be defeated. You understand that as vicious and as powerful as this capitalist system is, it has its weaknesses. And when you see the weaknesses, then there are opportunities to attack it. And right now is a great opportunity, because we see the cracks within the system. You see the ideological struggle between the individuals who are running the system. So this is the prime time to be organizing, to not only be organizing, but to be mobilizing and get prepared for that attack right now. So that's really important. But if you don't understand the science, you don't even understand that. You know, you'll be sitting back and say, oh, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to watch this show. No, we have to get active. We have to do things, because if you want to change things, you gotta play an active role in the change you want to see. Because things are going to move. Motion is constant. Motion is one of the constant. Motion is probably the only constant thing in the universe. And what I mean by motion, means change. Everything is in a constant state of change. So things are always going to change. But the important things to understand is we want to guide that change to something that is going to benefit us. We don't just want to go get swept up in the change and go wherever the current takes us. No, we want to play an active role in our liberation. We don't want to be dependent upon someone else, some politician or some whoever, some magical dude in the sky that you're praying to. We don't want to be just waiting on them to do things for us. We have to take control of our lives ourselves. In implementing and understanding the science and understanding the politics and our ideology and what we're trying to accomplish and what we need to do in the chess pieces in the positions in which we need to, how we need to position ourselves in order to get the outcome in which we need. So thank you for bringing that up. And another point that I did want to touch on is when you talked about the youth, the importance of the youth. This is so critical, because there's been a growing disconnect between elders and youth. And we got to fix that. We can fix it. You know, as you said, we have this, too many of us are buying into the propaganda about the youth, that they're all this, they're all terrible, they're worse than the Ku Klux Klan, as you said. You know, and I understand, because there is a criminal element within our community. There is a dangerous element within our community amongst the young people. That you know, I'm not saying that does not exist, but that is not all of our young people. That's not most of our young people. That is a loud minority within our young people. But this element we have to be able to address. We have to be able to deal with. We have to have to go fishing for these brothers and bring them back, because if you look at it, these individuals are the people who are supposed to be the soldiers. They are in the soldier class, the warrior class of our people, when you understand our African tradition. These are the warriors of our people, supposed to be the warriors of our people, but they're fighting the wrong war. They've been caught up, wrapped up, swept up into the propaganda of the United States of America, the miseducation system of the United States of America. And we become enemies to ourselves. But this can be corrected. But we have to repair that relationship between the young people and the older people. It's something that I really wish we would stop doing. And I think, if you listening to me, when you hear people call young men YNs, that stand for, pardon my French, young niggas. We can't address our young warriors as YNs, because how you identify, your identity informs you on how you're supposed to act, how you're supposed to respond. I even saw a video when they was talking about, well, yeah, if you're a certain age, you're a YN, and if you even younger, the younger the babies, they call them little ends. So it's like we can't be conditioning our young people to be terrorists within our community. Because when you identify yourself as a YN or a young N or whatever, you're not identifying, you're not seeing yourself as someone who is a protector of the community, someone who is a provider of the community, someone who is a leader within the community, someone whose job and responsibility is to raise up the community. So if you're out there and you have a certain level of consciousness in there, let's address that issue. You people see people calling them, they look at them YNs, they are off the chain. No, those are young men. Those are young brothers. Those are young kings. Those young gods. They're all of those things. They're not YNs. We are much more than that. We never was that. Those are some things that was created and put upon us by a system that was designed to exploit us. So we have to see ourselves for more than just what people have told us that we are, because we are more than that. We always have been more than that. And I'm going to end right there. You got anything you want to say?
Yes. Corruption. We got to fight against any kind of corruption, whether it's among the youth, among the older people, among whoever. We got to, in other words, get people to understand what corruption is. Corruption allows for the oppressor to come and take control of our community through these elements. And so we got to fight all these corrupt elements. We got to eliminate all these corrupt elements in our community that is keeping us from being able to do our work.
Definitely. And big shouts out to everybody out there who listening. But we've been on for about an hour, so that means it's time for us to go and get out of here. Make sure you join us every week where we're going to do this. This is about our third week back on the air. The Voices of New Africa. Look out for the Music of the Movement, another show we're putting out, because we put out music, we put out cartoons, we put out all levels and all aspects of propaganda, trying to educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. But like I said, join us every week. Thank everybody for tuning in. For my brother Landry, I think that, I'm sorry, I can't hardly see it on this device. It's really small. Thank you for your comment. But as always, we love y'all. Thank y'all for allowing us to come into your homes for this short time. And we're gonna end with our battle cry, and that is no doubt: free the land,
free the land, free the land, free the land,
free the land. No doubt. See y'all next week, y'all. Peace.